Benyam, Dawit Mazmur is my name. I'm from Ethiopia. I currently serve on the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, but also the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. I also bring greetings from our chairperson, Cardinal Shan Omali, who's the chairperson of the Commission on the Protection of Minors. So we have an exciting panel coming up, but I'm just going to make very brief remarks a little bit about the panel, but also about the celebration of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We have said, and we've already heard this morning, and it's also captured in the concept note, that this is actually the 30th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's obviously a great opportunity to take stock of what has been happening, but also to renew our commitment, particularly in the context of this meeting, in relation to child dignity and the digital space. Now, having said that, a child born, a question needs to be posed, and was posed actually in a number of occasions, including by UNICEF. And the question is this: is a child born today better off than a child born in 1989, when the convention was adopted? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes, but not every child. Because there are a number of children who often fall between the cracks. Children from minorities, children with disabilities, in a number of jurisdictions, girls, children who actually come from rural areas, children who've been abused, who've been deprived of their family, who've been deprived of their liberty. A long range of children continue to fall between the cracks. So the conversation that we need to have when we talk about the celebration of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, as it turns 30 next week, is what is it that we can actually do to improve the lived reality of children who are falling between the cracks? Those children who find themselves in the margins, those children who are in the peripheries. Now, having said that, this morning we have not yet had a conversation about definitions and the importance of definitions. Obviously, in the context of digital media, which is a cross-border issue, doesn't respect national jurisdictions, conversations about definitions are very important. Because in a number of occasions, you want to talk about accountability, you want to talk about prevention. When you talk about accountability, definition becomes important because you want to also talk about cross-border cooperation between states. You want to talk about extradition. You want to talk about making sure that the penalties that are actually imposed are commensurate with the gravity of the offense that has been committed. So definitions are absolutely important. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but I want to spend 10 or so seconds on the issue of child dignity. Some people would like to quibble with the fact that child dignity is actually a fluid concept, that it's open to interpretation. It might be dependent on religion, culture, and so forth, so forth. I beg to differ, because the convention talks about the fact that a child should grow up in an atmosphere of love, happiness, and understanding. That's what it says. It doesn't matter whether that child is in Azerbaijan or if that child is actually in Zimbabwe, from A to Z. The notion of love, understanding, and respect are absolutely critical. So when we talk about child dignity, we need to be able to place those three elements at the core of that definition. Now, there are 2 points that I just want to flag, and I'm going to open the floor to the panelists. 2 things that actually struck me from the conversation this morning, including the address by the Holy Father, but also the statement by His Highness Sheikh Saif bin Zayed Al Nahyan. 2 things. The first is, usually when we talk about interfaith, and believe me, as the Committee on the Rights of the Child, we work with 196 states. The notion of interfaith and cooperation between interfaiths is often associated with issues such as harmful practices like child marriage, female genital mutilation, in a number of issues in the context of health, for instance, addressing the HIV/AIDS pandemic and so forth. So we're actually making a very significant leap here when we talk about the role of interfaith in the context of the digital media. Because we often find ourselves, as I often say, one chapter behind. And religious leaders are significant role players, not just only in terms of addressing issues of prevention, but also in terms of addressing issues of accountability. So that aspect of Interfaith Alliance is absolutely critical for the subject matter that we're dealing with today. The second is the sense of urgency. You know, people usually say children are the future. Children are sick and tired of being the future. Children have to be a meaningful part of today in order to be a meaningful part of tomorrow. If we spend or waste 1 year in the life of a child, we have wasted 6% of his or her childhood. So all the conversation that we're having here today needs to be informed about the sense of urgency, the importance of now, and the cost of inaction, and what it will mean for the lived reality of children on the ground. Now, with those very brief remarks, I'm happy to say that we have an A team on the panel. It's an all-star team. We have a combination of people who are advocates, academicians, private sector, particularly non-profit private sector, people working with the United Nations, and of course people that are working within partnerships. So this will actually bring a lot of value added to the conversation that we're going to have. But it's also important to take into account the fact that the composition of the panel is a clear indication of the fact that we need interdisciplinary response to the challenge that we actually face. And the colleagues, and I've had a brief discussion with them, they're not just going to talk about challenges only. They're not just going to identify problems. They will also highlight the progress and some of the opportunities that are actually available in moving forward. And I think that's absolutely critical with the way that we want to push the space for the realization of children's rights. So the first speaker, and the panel is composed of Ernie Allen, who's with Child Dignity Alliance. We also have Hani Farid, Professor of Digital Forensics, Image Analysis and Human Perception, Berkeley School of Information. Stefano Zamani, President of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. Maud Bokikyo, UN Special Rapporteur on Cell and Sexual Exploitation of Children. Robert van der Berg, ECPAT Executive Director. Howard Taylor, Director, Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children. Last but not least, Julie Cordua, who is from TORN. Having said that, I give the floor to Ernie to start. You have the floor, Ernie.
Thank you.